You are not tired because you lack effort. You are tired because you have lived for too long in a way that is no longer true to who you are. Every day you wake up and keep trying to do better, learn more, stay positive, be stronger. You do everything the world tells you is right. Yet when night comes, there is still a hollow space inside that is hard to name. A fatigue that does not come from the body, but from having to constantly become someone else just to survive. In 2025, many people chose the path of self-improvement. They read books, listened to advice, learned new skills, and pushed themselves forward. But the more they tried, the further they felt from themselves. Peace did not stay. Joy came and left very quickly. And deep underneath, the sense of emptiness remained. Buddhism does not teach us to become a more perfect version of ourselves. The Buddha did not ask you to fix who you are. He gently pointed out that suffering begins the moment we turn away from ourselves. The year 2026 does not ask you to become someone else. It simply invites you to stop abandoning yourself. This video does not push you to change. It only helps you return to the truest version of who you already are. Lesson 1. You are exhausted because you are disconnected. You are exhausted not because you lack motivation. You are exhausted because you have lived for too long in a state of separation from yourself. Many people believe that tiredness comes from not doing enough, not trying hard enough, or not being strong enough compared to others. But when we look more deeply through the light of Buddhist wisdom, we can see a quieter and more hidden cause. It is when the mind and the body are no longer in the same place. Burnout is not only physical exhaustion, it is a sign that the mind has left the body a long time ago. Your body still wakes up, still goes to work, still eats, still speaks, and interacts. But your mind wanders through worries, old memories, or stories that have not yet happened. You live in the present through the body, but in the past and the future through the mind. This separation continues day after day without you noticing, until the feeling of exhaustion becomes constant. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we do not clearly see what is happening within us. When the body does one thing while the mind is somewhere else, we lose our sense of wholeness. Every action feels heavier. Every moment of joy becomes shorter. You do not truly rest, even when you are sitting still. You do not truly live, even when you are busy. In modern life, this happens very often. When we eat, we think about work. When we work, we think about results. When we are with loved ones, we still carry our phone and unfinished thoughts. The body is here, but the mind is always elsewhere. Over time, the body begins to speak through fatigue, tension, sleeplessness, and emptiness. Burnout is not the enemy. It is a reminder that you have gone too far away from yourself. Mindfulness in Buddhism is not about trying to control thoughts. Mindfulness is a reunion. It is the moment when the body and the mind are invited to return to the same place. When you breathe and know that you are breathing. When you walk and know that you are walking. When you are tired and allow yourself to recognize that tiredness without judgment. In that moment, the separation begins to heal. Begin with a very simple question. Right now, where am I? Am I in my body, or am I drifting in my thoughts? There is no right or wrong answer. Only honesty. If you notice that you are lost in thinking, gently bring your attention back to bodily sensations. Feel your feet touching the ground. Feel the breath moving in and out. There is nothing to change. Just stay. During the day, practice this 3 times. In the morning when you wake up. In the middle of the day when you begin to feel tired. And in the evening before sleep. Each time, simply pause for a few breaths and ask the question again. Gradually, you will notice that exhaustion softens not because you are doing less, but because you are no longer abandoning yourself. And from this reunion, natural life energy slowly returns. Lesson 2. Stop performing your life. After realizing that exhaustion comes from the separation between body and mind, we need to look one layer deeper. Many people are not only living far from their bodies, They are also living inside a role that has lasted for many years. A role built to fit the expectations of society, family, work, and even the ideal images they created for themselves. And the daily effort to maintain this role quietly drains their life energy. In 2026, people are no longer only seeking validation from the outside. They have begun to perform the leading role in their own lives. You perform strength even when you are deeply tired. You perform positivity even when your heart is full of anxiety. You perform success even when life no longer feels meaningful. This role may bring praise, acceptance, and a sense of safety, but it also makes you increasingly unfamiliar with the person you truly are inside. Buddhism clearly distinguishes between social image and true nature. What society sees is only an outer layer formed by roles, titles, achievements, and carefully shaped personalities. But your true self does not live inside those labels. When you completely identify with your social image, you begin to live to maintain appearances instead of living to listen to your inner truth. And from that moment, suffering begins. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering lies in a constructed self. This self says, I must be like this, I cannot be like that, I must prove that I am someone. When this self is constantly fed, you begin to compare, defend, strive, and fear. You fear losing your image. You fear being seen differently. You fear that if you stop, everything will collapse. Yet it is precisely this tension that is exhausting you. Many people are afraid to stop performing because they no longer know who they are without the role. If they stop pretending to be fine, they fear they will appear weak. If they stop pretending to be positive, they fear being abandoned. If they stop pretending to be successful, they fear becoming meaningless. But Buddhism does not see vulnerability as failure. Buddhism sees honesty with oneself as the beginning of awakening. When you live inside a role for too long, you lose touch with your true emotions. You respond out of habit, image, and obligation. Yet inside, there's a deeply tired part waiting to be heard. That part does not need you to become better. It only needs you to stop pretending, to stop holding yourself together to prove something, to stop chasing an image you believe is necessary to be loved. The practice in this lesson is simple, yet very deep. Before making an important decision, or before pushing yourself one step further, pause and ask yourself this question. If no one were watching, if no one were judging, if no one were praising or criticizing, would I still want to do this? Let the question echo in silence. Do not rush to answer. Sometimes the answer does not come as words, but as a sense of lightness or heaviness in the body. When you begin asking this question regularly, you will realize that many of your actions do not arise from truth, but from fear. And when you dare to let go of actions that no longer align, you do not lose your value. On the contrary, you begin to touch your real life again. From that point on, energy is no longer consumed by performance, but is used to live more fully. When you stop performing your own life, you do not become irresponsible. You simply become more real. And it is this truth that forms a solid foundation for the next lesson, where returning home no longer happens only in the mind, but moves deeper into the body and into every breath. Lesson 3. Come back to the body. After realizing that exhaustion comes from living far from yourself and from constantly performing a role that is not true, the next step of the healing journey is to return to a place many people have forgotten: the body. In 2026, people do not lack knowledge or thoughts. What they lack is presence. We live almost entirely in our heads, analyzing, predicting, worrying, planning, and talking to ourselves without pause. Meanwhile, the body remains there, quietly carrying all the tension, all the wounds, and all the emotions that have never been fully heard. Buddhism teaches that body and mind are not separate entities. When the mind is pulled into constant thinking, the body bears the consequences. Stress and emotional trauma do not exist only in memory or feeling. They are stored in muscles, in breathing patterns, and in unconscious reflexes. There are fears you no longer clearly remember, yet your body still reacts whenever familiar situations arise. There are pressures you believe you have overcome, yet your shoulders remain tight, your chest heavy, and your breath shallow. Wisdom in Buddhism is not found only in correct understanding through thought. Wisdom also lives in the ability to directly feel what is happening. When you live only in your head, you may understand many things, yet still feel no relief. Healing does not happen at the level of ideas. It happens at the level of lived experience. The body is the only place that is always in the present moment. It does not live in yesterday and does not run toward tomorrow. When you return to the body, you naturally return to now. Many people search for peace by thinking more positively, reasoning more clearly, or analyzing themselves more deeply. But sometimes what is needed is not another thought, but fewer thoughts. It is allowing yourself to feel instead of explain. It is stopping long enough to notice what the body is saying. When you listen to the body, you begin to hear very real messages that the mind has ignored for far too long. The first practice is very simple. Place one hand on your chest. Do nothing else. Just leave your hand there and feel the warmth. Feel the heartbeat. Feel the gentle movement of the chest as you breathe. This gesture sends a signal of safety to the nervous system, reminding the body that you are present and listening. Next, bring attention to the breath. There is no need to breathe deeply. Simply let the exhale be slightly longer than the inhale. When the out-breath is longer, the body naturally enters a state of relaxation. The nervous system softens. The mind begins to settle without force. With each exhale, allow the shoulders to soften, the jaw to relax, and the belly to gently release. Finally, connect with the five senses. Look around and notice 5 things you can see. Listen for 3 sounds that are present. Feel 2 points of contact between your body and the ground or the chair. With just a few seconds like this, you return to reality. You are no longer drifting in thought. You are here, inside your body. When you practice returning to the body each day, you do not need to try to become peaceful. Peace arises naturally when body and mind meet again. This is the great difference of the journey in 2026. Not escaping thoughts with more thoughts, but stepping out of the head and returning to the felt experience of being alive in each moment. Lesson 4. Choose fewer things. Live deeper. After returning to the body and sensing life as it is present, another truth gradually reveals itself. Much of the exhaustion in life does not come from a lack of control, but from too many choices. You are not exhausted because you cannot manage your life. You are exhausted because you are trying to hold too many things at the same time. Too many goals, too many roles, too many paths opening every day. The mind is stretched tight, not because it is weak, but because it is fragmented. In modern life, we are taught that the more choices we have, the freer we become. But Buddhism sees this differently. When there are too many choices, the mind cannot settle anywhere. It jumps from one task to another, from one desire to the next. Every choice demands energy, attention, and emotion. When nothing is released, the mind slowly becomes restless, even if life appears full on the outside. You can notice this clearly. When there are too many things to do, you no longer do anything deeply. When there are too many relationships, you are no longer fully present in any meeting. When there is too much information, you can no longer hear your inner voice. This fragmentation happens quietly until one day you realize you are always busy, yet not truly living. The Buddha taught that simplicity is not lack. Simplicity is freedom. When life is simplified, the mind has space to breathe. When you choose less, you begin to live more deeply. Living deeply does not mean doing great or dramatic things. Living deeply means being fully present with what is here. A single meal eaten in mindfulness can nourish you more than 100 unfinished plans. Many people are afraid to let go because they believe that if they do not hold on, they will lose something. But in reality, the more you hold, the more you lose yourself. Every unnecessary commitment, every goal that does not arise from inner truth, every excessive concern takes away a piece of your life energy. When you dare to choose less, you do not become smaller. You become clearer. Begin with a gentle question. In this season of my life, what can be released? You do not need to let go of your entire life. Just one thing. It may be an expectation, a habit that drains your energy, a concern that no longer nourishes you. Let the question stay with you for a few days. The answer will come when you are ready. The next practice is to live slowly with intention for 1 month. Not doing less in an extreme way, but doing each thing with full presence. Reduce activities that are not necessary. Keep what truly nourishes you. When you eat, eat. When you rest, rest. When you speak, speak with attention. 1 month like this is enough for you to feel the difference. When you choose less, the mind begins to quiet down. When the mind quiets, you hear your inner voice more clearly. And when you live more deeply with what remains, peace does not need to be searched for. It naturally appears as the result of a life no longer pulled in too many directions at once. Lesson 5. Rebuild self-trust. After learning to slow down and choose less in order to live more deeply, a very clear gap begins to appear. It is the absence of trust in yourself. Many people believe their problem is a lack of confidence. But when we look more deeply through the light of Buddhist wisdom, we see something else. The problem is not that you are not good enough or not strong enough. The problem is that you no longer trust your own feelings and inner voice. Trust in yourself does not disappear in a single day. It is slowly worn away each time you ignore what you truly feel. When you are tired, but say you are fine. When you are sad, but smile it away. When you do not want to, yet still say yes because you fear disappointing others. Each time this happens, you are telling yourself that your feelings do not matter. And over time, you begin to hear yourself less and less clearly. The Buddha taught that suffering does not come from emotions, but from refusing to look directly at them. When you turn away from what is happening inside, the mind learns to cover up instead of listen. You become accustomed to living by logic, obligation, and what you should do. But life does not operate by commands. It moves through honesty. When honesty is abandoned for too long, trust in yourself slowly fades away. Many people can make quick decisions for work, for others, and for external matters. But when it comes to deciding for themselves, they hesitate, feel afraid, and seek validation from outside. Not because they are weak, but because they no longer believe their own feelings are worth listening to. They have become more familiar with doubting themselves than trusting themselves. Mindfulness in Buddhism is not about forcing yourself to think correctly. Mindfulness is the act of returning to listen with sincerity, listening to sensations in the body, listening to emotions that are present, listening to your natural response in each situation. When you listen without judgment, you send yourself a powerful message. I am here with myself. I trust that what I feel matters. Rebuilding trust does not require grand declarations. It begins with very small actions. Keep small promises to yourself. If you promise yourself 10 minutes of rest, truly rest. If you promise to go to bed earlier, honor that promise. Each kept promise becomes a brick placed back into the foundation of trust. You do not need many. You only need consistency. The next practice is learning to say no without explanation. When you over-explain, you are asking permission for your boundaries to exist. But boundaries do not need approval. When you say no calmly and clearly, you remind yourself that your needs matter too. At first, this may feel difficult, but each time you succeed, trust in yourself grows a little stronger. When you begin to trust yourself again, you do not become selfish. You become grounded. And from that grounded place, you are ready to continue the journey of letting go of the old layers that once helped you survive, but are no longer needed now. Lesson 6. Let go of the self you had to become. After beginning to rebuild trust with yourself, a deeper question naturally arises. Who am I when I no longer have to try to become someone? Many people enter the healing journey with the desire to let go of goals, ambitions, or responsibilities. But Buddhism does not teach us to abandon the direction of our lives. What needs to be released is not the goal itself, but the defensive self that was formed to help us survive in the past. Each person once had to become a certain version of themselves in order to survive. Some had to become strong so they would not be hurt. Some had to become capable so they would be recognized. Some had to become pleasing so they would be loved. These identities were not wrong. They were necessary armor during very real stages of life. Because of them, you made it through times of hardship, lack, or deep insecurity. The problem only appears when that armor is never taken off. When circumstances have changed, yet the old identity continues to control how you live. You no longer need to defend yourself, but you still react as if you are under threat. You are no longer in the old environment, yet you continue to carry the old fears. At that point, what once helped you survive begins to turn into an invisible prison. The Buddha called this attachment to self. Not self in the sense of pride, but clinging tightly to an image of who you are. When you say, "I am this kind of person, I cannot be different," you are confining yourself. Every action and every choice must serve that image. And when life changes, you suffer because you cannot move fluidly with the new current. Non-self in Buddhism does not mean that you do not exist. Non-self means you are not bound to a fixed definition. When you no longer need to protect an old image, you are free to respond to reality as it is. You can be strong when strength is needed, and soft when you are tired. You can lead, and you can also pause. Freedom does not come from controlling yourself better. It comes from no longer being controlled by a familiar role. Many people are afraid to let go of an old identity because they fear that without it, they will be empty. But this emptiness is not a loss. It is space. When space appears, true life finally has room to reveal itself. Natural qualities such as compassion, clarity, and peace do not need to be created. They only need to be uncovered. The practice in this lesson is a very deep question. Who am I without this label? Choose one label you often use to define yourself. It may be the strong one, the capable one, the self-sacrificing one, or the one who is always fine. Sit quietly and allow the question to be present. There is no need to answer with thought. Just feel. There may be fear. There may be relief. All of it is allowed. When you dare to loosen your grip on the old identity, you do not lose yourself. You meet yourself at a deeper level, and from that meeting point, you can continue, walking through life with greater flexibility and freedom, ready to live in alignment with your true rhythm. Lesson 7. Live at your own rhythm. After loosening the old identities and no longer being tightly bound to the image you once had to become, a very natural need begins to arise. It is the need to live according to your own rhythm. Many people believe their problem is a lack of focus or a lack of discipline. But when we look more deeply, we see that the root of exhaustion does not lie in insufficient effort. It lies in living according to someone else's rhythm for far too long. The modern world celebrates speed. Whoever moves faster is seen as more capable. Whoever does more is seen as more valuable. From there, people unconsciously begin to compare their pace of life with the pace of those around them. When they see others moving ahead quickly, they feel panic. When they notice themselves slowing down, they blame themselves. But Buddhism does not see life as a race. The Buddha saw life as a flowing current, where each person has their own rhythm shaped by conditions and timing. Comparison is the fastest way to lose your own rhythm. When you compare, you stop listening to your body and your mind. You force yourself to stay awake when your body needs rest. You eat when you are not truly hungry and ignore real hunger when it appears. You work when your mind is already tired and try to rest while your heart is still tense. This misalignment accumulates day by day until you feel as though you are always behind, even though you have tried so hard. In Buddhism, all phenomena move according to seasons and conditions. Flowers do not bloom all year. Trees do not bear fruit in every season. Human life is the same. There are times when you need to move forward, learn, and expand. There are times when you need to pause, recover, and go inward. When you force yourself to live out of season, you do not only become tired, you lose touch with your own natural wisdom. Living at your own rhythm does not mean giving up or becoming stagnant. It means knowing when to move quickly and when to slow down. It means listening to the signals of the body instead of blindly following rigid schedules. It means understanding that rest is not wasteful, but an essential part of a whole life. When you respect your own rhythm, energy is no longer drained by tension and self-criticism. The practice in this lesson begins with very basic things. Observe your sleep rhythm. Are you sleeping less than your body truly needs? Adjust your bedtime so your body can genuinely recover. Next is your eating rhythm. Eat when you are hungry and stop when you have had enough. Eat slowly and feel each bite. Then comes your working rhythm. Alternate between focus and rest. Do not extend strain simply because you feel you must finish. Each day, choose at least one period of time to live slowly with awareness. It may be early in the morning or at the end of the day. During that time, do not rush, do not multitask, and do not chase goals. Do one thing and be fully present with it. This helps the body and mind remember their natural rhythm. When you live according to your own rhythm, you gradually stop comparing. You no longer need to know where others are. You only need to know where you are and what is appropriate right now. Gently remind yourself of one simple sentence whenever pressure arises. My pace is enough. When you truly believe this, peace no longer feels distant. It becomes the natural state of a life lived in harmony. Lesson 8. When you return to yourself, you help the world. When you learn to live according to your own rhythm and stop forcing yourself to move at someone else's pace, a very natural change begins to occur. You no longer feel the need to become better in order to help someone. You no longer carry the pressure of having to heal the world. Yet it is precisely then that your positive influence spreads most powerfully. Buddhism calls this transformation without effort. When you return to yourself, you create gentle yet deep ripples. Many people grow up believing they must sacrifice themselves to help others. They think that if they do not give endlessly, they are selfish. If they do not push themselves to be strong, they are useless. But the Buddha did not teach that compassion begins with depletion. He taught that true compassion can only arise when the mind is no longer divided. When you stop turning away from yourself, gentleness naturally flows outward without force. When you return to yourself, you no longer react from tension and fear. You are more present in every conversation. You listen instead of rushing to fix. You stay instead of rushing to advise. That presence itself becomes a form of healing. Many people do not need advice. They simply need to be near someone who carries no urgency, no judgment, and no demand for them to be different. In Buddhism, presence is considered the greatest gift. When your mind is settled and not pulled away by thoughts and worries, your energy becomes stable. Others can feel this, even if nothing is said. A person who feels anxious may feel lighter in your presence. A person who is suffering may begin to breathe more deeply when they are fully listened to. You do nothing, yet your presence creates a sense of safety. Many attempts to help fail because they come from an ego that wants to fix. When you have not returned to yourself, helping others often carries the desire to be recognized, to be needed, or to feel valuable. This unintentionally adds pressure to both sides. But when you have returned, you do not need to prove anything. You do not help in order to feel better about yourself. You simply are there. And it is precisely this lack of effort that opens the door to true connection. The image of ripples spreading across a still pond fits this lesson well. When you drop a stone into the water, you do not need to control the waves. They spread naturally. In the same way, when you care for the calm within yourself, its influence reaches family, friends, and even strangers you may never know. You speak more slowly. You respond more gently. You are more deeply present. All of these create an impact. Buddhism does not place the burden of saving the world on the individual. The Buddha did not ask each person to change the world. He simply taught each person to awaken within their own life. When you stop fighting yourself, you stop creating more suffering. And when suffering is no longer fed, compassion arises, naturally as a result, not as an obligation. The practice in this lesson is simple, but it requires honesty. When you are with others, notice whether you are trying to help or simply being there. If you feel tension, the urge to fix or to speak, return to the breath and feel the body. Remind yourself that presence is enough. You do not need to do more than that. When you truly stay, others will feel it. When you return to yourself, you do not withdraw from the world. You step into the world with a more whole heart. And from that wholeness, the world is touched gently, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply real. This is how Buddhism understands service. It begins within, flows outward, like quiet yet enduring ripples across the surface of water. As this journey slowly comes to a close, what remains is not a list of more things you need to do, nor a plan to become someone else. After all the lessons we have walked through, returning to the body, letting go of roles, slowing down, trusting yourself again, and flowing with your natural rhythm, perhaps the most important realization is this: you have been here all along. You simply forgot at times. The year 2026 does not need a grand declaration. It does not need loud promises or goals that require you to push yourself even harder. What this new year asks for is only a very gentle vow, yet sincere enough to carry with you each day. A vow not meant to change your life overnight, but to change the way you live within it. That vow is simple. This year, I choose not to abandon myself, not to abandon my true feelings, not to abandon the body that is speaking, not to abandon my own rhythm, not to abandon the tiredness that needs rest, not to abandon the small joys that are already present. When you hold this vow, many other things begin to fall into place naturally, without force. Buddhism does not see returning as a step backward. Returning is wisdom. It is the moment you stop chasing external images and begin living from your inner roots. When you no longer leave yourself behind, you no longer need to search far away for balance. Balance appears in the way you breathe, the way you walk, the way you listen, and the way you treat yourself each day. There may be moments when you forget this vow. You may rush again, compare again, and tense yourself as before. That is perfectly fine. Returning is not about doing it right all the time. Returning is about remembering again and again that you can pause at any moment. And each time you remember, you are practicing Buddhism in a very living way. If you wish to mark this vow, write a short sentence in the comments. I choose to return. No explanation is needed. No long story is required. Just one sentence to remind yourself that you have chosen this path for 2026. And if these reflections have walked alongside you, consider subscribing to Buddhist in Life. Each video here is not meant to teach you how to become someone else, but to gently remind you to return to who you have always been. May you step into 2026 with kindness toward yourself, and from there, allow peace to naturally flow into your life.